Okay, I'm recording. If you look towards Thomas.
Okay.
And just stand in nice and close for me. That's it. Okay, I'm recording.
Hello, we are in Glasgow today at the occasion of the International Astronautical Federation. And as you can see in the background, you have the exhibition hall being set up. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Dr. Gray, who is the past president of the International Astronautical Federation. And it's the first time that I meet Dr. Gray, so it's a great pleasure. And I'm very pleased to have him here for this interview.
It's a pleasure to be here, Thomas.
Thank you. So, Dr. Gray, first I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and say a few words about your life.
Okay, my name is Jerry Gray. I became interested in aeronautics at the age of 4 when I was building model airplanes with a child's fingers, but loving every minute of it. And since then I've moved on to other fields. I'm mainly now involved in space. My primary expertise is in propulsion, rocket engines, and space power systems. And most of my professional career was as a professor of aerospace engineering at Princeton University. I still consult quite actively in the field, however, for a number of different clients.
Dr. Gray, now moving to 1984, which is a big date for you because you were elected as a president. What strong memories do you keep of this period as a president of the IAF?
Well, I have kind of one strong memory for each year I served as president. In 1984, my favorite time was having dinner at Girardet, a 3-star restaurant in Lausanne, Switzerland, which is where the Congress was held that year. And I hosted Dick Scobie and his wife, June. Dick later was the commander of the Challenger, which exploded in 1986. And June has become the chairman of the Challenger Centers, an educational group that is designed to inspire young people in the futures in space. So it was a wonderful experience for me to meet them both at that time and to see what happened afterwards. My second happened the following year, in 1985, when I was president. This time the meeting was in Stockholm, in Sweden, and I had the honor of escorting King Carl XV Gustav, King Carl XVI Gustav, through the exhibit at the IAF Congress, very much like the exhibit that you see here today. And the funniest experience I had with that was after I got through, one of my friends who was the principal engineer for Lockheed at the time came to me afterward and said, "God, Jerry, that was wonderful. I never had a king visit my booth before." I remember that very well. The third one was a kind of a funny experience that happened in 1986. This is my third year as president, in Innsbruck, Austria. And I was able to get Estee Lauder, who I'm sure you've all heard of, to throw a big party, a big gala party for the IAF Congress. Her son at that time was the US ambassador to Austria, and she was looking for ways to publicize his appearance there. So she thought the IAF Congress was a wonderful way to do that. And she gave this wonderful party. All through the party, she kept tugging my sleeve and saying, "I want to meet the teacher in space. I want to meet the teacher in space." So I introduced her to Barbara Morgan, who had succeeded Krista McAuliffe as the teacher in space. And Estee Lauder went over to Barbara and said, "You know, you're in space. It's very dry up there, and have I got a cream for you?" Very funny instance. I really enjoyed that.
So I see it's very pleasant memories you
Yes.
have of your presidency. Now rewinding back to 1984 when you were elected, would you share with us your insight on the context of your election?
Yes, well, I had been the vice president appointed by the United States for 7 years before that, representing the United States on the Bureau of the Federation. And for 8 years before that, I had been the vice president of the International Academy of Astronautics for technical activities. So I had an extensive background in the IAF, and of course, I've always had an extensive background in the space field. So I came fairly prepared. The other preparation I had, which was extremely important for my stay as president, in 1982, I was the Deputy Secretary General of the Second United Nations Conference on the Exploration and Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And therefore, I had an opportunity to integrate into the UN activities in space, which people don't realize are fairly extensive. So with that background, I think I brought to the presidency of the IAF a very interesting preparation for the job.
Dr. Gray, what do you consider your main contributions at the head of the IAF?
Well, the association with the United Nations really gave me the lever for that. I was the one that was instrumental in having the IAF declared as an official observer to the United Nations meetings, both of the main Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and also the two subcommittees, the Legal and Scientific and Technical Subcommittee. And the IAF continues to serve in that capacity at the UN. I was also able to bring a close association between the Federation and the UN by getting the UN to commission actually a series of studies by the IAF and a series of seminars and workshops at the United Nations meetings, organized and operated by the IAF. And I was the one that actually did the organization and operation of those meetings. But again, it was a strong tie-in between the United Nations, another international organization, and the IAF. And finally, I was the one that got the IAF to commission the current reports that the IAF does for the United Nations, called Highlights in Space Technology and Applications, for each year. And I have written that report ever since I was president every year, and I'm still doing that. I do that this year too.
And how did this very active presidency change your perspective on space activities?
Well, one other thing I would like to remind you of. In addition to the association with the UN, I was also I was the spark plug in reorganizing the entire committee structure of the Academy in conjunction with J. Preston Layton and George Miller of the International Academy of Astronautics. We restructured the whole technical committee structure of the Academy and the Federation. And that's basically the structure that the Federation has today. I think that was a very important contribution. The third really important one was opening the membership in the IAF to organizations that were not professional societies or government agencies. That is, commercial corporations involved in space research. This really constitutes now the bulk of IAF membership today. But I was the one that got it moving and got it started, and that's something I was very proud of.
Okay. So yeah, indeed, your presence is still here at the IAF.
Yes, it is.
And I would like to know how your presidency, your action as a president, changed your perspective on space activities.
Well, the most important thing was to recognize the extreme importance of bringing in the younger generation. The IAF used to be a kind of a staid organization, old guys who'd been in the game for a long time. And in recent years, that has changed. And part of it, of course, has been my influence and my motivation. As a professor at Princeton, I saw a lot of young people, and I love to see these young people get into the field. And I think moving that into the international arena through the IAF was a very important function of the IAF following my presidency.
And where do you see the IAF going in the future?
Well, again, this is probably the most important function they can do, and that is to bring in the next generation of engineers and scientists. Today, the aerospace field is suffering a major difficulty in that there are no people coming in to replace those who are working in the field today. This is recognized in virtually every nation in the world involved in space, that we are lacking the interest and motivation of the younger generation in replacing those who are phasing out of this generation. So of all the things the IAF should do, that's probably the most important. The second one would be to reestablish a stronger connection with the United Nations. The United Nations is the prime international organization in the world. It has a strong interest in space, and I think the interest that we developed back in the 1970s and early 1980s is beginning to wane a bit. And the IAF could really rejuvenate that association. It would be a very good thing to do. And finally, to establish more strongly establishing the IAF as a major player in the international scene. The IAF, when it was first formed, was kind of looked upon as a chowder and marching society. Well, we grew out of that years and years ago. But I think the stronger the IAF comes, the stronger the Congress comes every year, the more important it is to make sure that we have the attention of the national space agencies and particularly the big corporations who are involved in space activities. So again, raising what I would call the clout of the IAF is a very important function.
Thank you. And from your experience as a IAF president, what advice would you like to give to a current president?
Well, I would like to tell them to increase and intensify the wonderful activities in bringing young people in to the Congress. Not just the Congress, but in activities all year. And to establish better relationships with the International Space University and other organizations that stimulate the young people. And again, the other thing I would advise him to do is to see what he could do about reestablishing better relations with the United Nations. So.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gray. It was a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant Congress.
Thanks. We always have a very pleasant time at the IAF Congresses.
That's a pleasure to hear. Thank you.